disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
Best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Life is funny sometimes. I'll tell you, this happens to me a lot, where I do a video, and for those of you who don't know, I generally will, if I'm commuting, or like lately, I've been on the road a lot, so from an airport, from a hotel room, what have you, I'll do a number of videos. Usually, I'd say my average about 4 or 5 videos at a time. And then eventually I process them, put them out, and typically I stack them up. Usually there's at least, a week's worth of videos uploaded to my site, and preloaded. And it's the way I do things. It's not the way you do things if you're trying to be a really popular YouTuber, because your news is sometimes out of date. Your commentary feels stale at times. I mean, it's not the way you gain traffic. But if you just want to talk to people and do what I do here, it works perfectly. It works perfectly for me. But it is funny when you do a video and then like a couple days later, you notice somebody else did that video, same video, but yours is in queue. It hasn't launched yet. And so it creates an interesting harmony with a number of people. I know both Wes, Zach, others have done this before. I mailed Zach at one point. Like, hey, you threw up a video that I've got coming out on Thursday. This is hilarious. And everybody's going to think we're collaborating, but it's all accidental. So it's weird. One of the videos that I put up and, or did was around this, the Marvel news, being kind of merged into Disney and all the different things around that. And kind of being surprised or asking the question, why is it that the immediate reaction from several people in comic news is that there's nothing to see here? There's nothing. No, this is no big deal. And sure enough, right after that video was made, or about a day after, both Bleeding Cool, The Beat, and I'm sure others that I just didn't notice, posted those exact articles. Bleeding Cool posted I'm assuming in response to me in some cases, the morning after the night before. He's like, you're not a poet. It's like it blows it up if you're trying to be kind of literary with your headlines and your articles when you have just absolutely atrocious editing. But that is rich in a hole. So these articles came out. It's kind of funny. I wound up deleting that video that I recorded because it no longer makes as much sense, because I was speculating on why people would do things, and then they did them. So it is funny. This video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'd like to see, but it just cracks me up, some of this stuff, that nothing has changed. Don't expect any big changes. Everything is the same. Yeah, the CEO and several top executives and many of the operational departments of the company have been folded in via redundancy. But it's fine. It's fine. I noticed with a lot of these articles, you start with like a crazy statement, and then you tuck in all the things you want to do. Rich writes, "There is to be no dissolution. Just all there's." Basically, he says, There's to be no like end of Marvel Comics, publishing comics, and then it like nobody in their right mind is saying that, but then it continues to go down around words like redundant don't reflect the reality of Marvel Comics or their position. I mean, it's in the statement Disney is making around their subsidiaries, but sure it doesn't reflect it. They're seen as a valuable legacy and creator of IP. I notice though with a lot of these articles, it bounces between things nobody says, tucked in kind of talking points, it feels like, and then like just crazy out of control things with no periods or commas to separate this rambling kind of crazy thing. It's weird. The Beat article was even stranger, because in this one, Heidi's statement really seemed to be a long article, about how Ike Perlmutter was fired. That was what was on Heidi's mind. And it is a long, long article about just every shot she could get. It feels like there was a lot of shots she had in the bank, and now Ike is going to be gone, and so I've got to get them all out because there's not going to really be a need to write about him much in the future. So it just goes on. She winds up comparing, basically, deep, almost sexual fawning over Bob Iger and his, unrivaled strength in, removing Ike Perlmutter in the most hilarious and offensive way. He was able to pull off a Game of Thrones worthy kill shot. That's really pretty astounding. It blows you away. They called him laid off, the most menial and subservient way to go out. No, fired is the most menial way to go out. Laid off. And there it blared in every headline from Hollywood to the Beltway. Why do people write like this? I don't know. It is so bizarre. You read this stuff. And I go back to the other video and the other premise, which was, what is the motivation for nothing to see here news when there's obviously something to see here? Obviously. People have speculated, like, oh, they're covering up from the comic industry. But why? Why in this case? Why are you covering up for a major corporation? Why are you jumping in front of, $1 billion corporation, doing something to one of their subsidiaries to pull it in? How is that helping comics? People write me all the time like, are you helping comics? I don't know. You talk about things that are bad people things. But I'm asking this, how does articles talking about how nothing happened, don't worry about it, it actually, the thing you think you're seeing isn't happening. How is that helping comics? Especially, I get the idea of like, hey, we need to be positive here because it doesn't help comics to be just super negative all the time. I get that totally. But I don't get there's clearly published news that anyone can see where Disney's own statements are confirming many of these things. And the response is not just, hey, I know this is a lot going on, but it'll be okay. It's nothing is actually happening at all. Well, that's weird. That's just weird. And then to kind of go off on what feels like what a 14-year-old girl would write in her journal about comparing these staff changes to an HBO show that she's not old enough to watch. That is bizarre. I mean, look, this is in no way, and I understand it all gets political. It's like Perlmutter had the attachment to the Trump administration, all that kind of stuff. But Perlmutter was a dick. No mistake about it. I'm not sorry to see him gone. No, the guy was not somebody to be running a comic company, big or small. But just to say nothing is happening. I mean, Heidi was, by the way, a little bit more honest about hey, some things are probably going to be changing here. There will be some like this statement. Honestly, as long as you're saying things are stupid, let's say something is true. Heidi writes, executives at Perlmutter's level usually depart under some cloud of restructuring, retirement, booted upstairs to their own production companies, spending more time with family. Okay. And then she goes, but no. And then she talks about how he was fired some more. And then, is Marvel Comics in trouble? Marvel Entertainment was absorbed, much like DC was absorbed into Warner. And she draws that parallel. Several of the insiders I talked to yesterday beat about this, mostly about glee at Ike's removal. And maybe you need to talk to more people. Like maybe you don't just talk to the same, 3 or 4 people. This is the best move. But then she notes that, yeah, there's probably going to be some, something that is going to go on. Dan Buckley is still there, but, it still has some marketing value. It's just, look, my own opinion, this is Heidi's words, is that Disney loves to look like it values creative people with things like their Legends program, honoring animators, Imagineers, songwriters. The Marvel bullpen, which doesn't exist anymore, still has some symbolic value as part of Disney's happiest place on earth, and Feige seems to have gone along with this idea until now. Of course, it's a very different world now. Disney has troubles and, goes into some of the things that are happening. So, there will be changes. For sure. but it's still weird. So I guess I don't get the motivation to ignore it. And I think it ignores what's a more interesting thing to talk about, which is, all right, what is the opportunity? What would we like to see from Marvel Comics right now? Marvel Comics sitting on a massive amount of IP and value. So what happens? Where does it go? And I think there's a number of pretty good answers in there. There's some interesting pieces. I mean, in my mind, one of the things I speculated will happen just because it aligns to what Disney Press and other groups, and by the way, it is Disney Press, Rich, not what you were calling it. But, I do believe there's going to be fewer comics. I believe there's going to be at least a little bit of a tilt with it if the company continues to publish its own comics, and I think they will for, a decent length of time as they kind of work these groups together. There will be less. They're not going to go out. The number they were putting out was absurd in a lot of ways. I also think they're going to dive more into licensing some of this stuff out. The Alex Ross deal was a good deal financially for the company. And so there will be more of them. One thing that, when you look at the top of how Disney operates, the ego hits differently. And what I mean by that is, a lot of one of the initial reactions I heard from the Alex Ross project for Fantastic Four was that there were people inside Marvel that were frustrated by it because they felt it showed up the work that happened within the company. The fact that it was successful on Amazon and did good was seen as, kind of a shot, if you will, at their own efforts. And so they were not, there was not universal happiness at its success. Well, if you look at Disney's staff, and anybody who's worked for Disney understands that political model, will tell you the ego and what the definition of success is changes a little bit. If you can be, in control of portfolios that make money across a number of different channels, that means you're a this is going to sound weird, but you're a puppeteer. I don't mean that in a manipulative sense. I mean that you've got a lot of different bets going and you can pull them all off. That is the nature of success, not I personally shepherded this one thing and I was in control of it. Disney tends to drill that out at the executive level. They tend to have far more value placed on maximizing IP potential and stories, and a lot less on, I did this one thing really, really well. It's how you've seen people rise in the company, how you see people get rewarded in the company. It tends to be with that. And so I think you will see kind of this shift where if people are valued based on the ability to kind of put out books, license books, get some other deals done, and treat it more like a portfolio, which is increasingly a popular word in media, always kind of has been, but more so. I think you're going to see that change. I think that opens up the door to a lot of potential. That's what I would like to see. What I believe I will see. I mentioned previously in the other video I did, but what I would like to see is that I would like to see Marvel do a lot of the things that I've talked about before. A big one being really kind of maximize the genres you're going after. So you want to do some slice of life stuff? Great. You should try and chase that next Scott Pilgrim type wave. Go for it. Make it work. But at the same time, nail superhero. And I have at least a tiny bit of optimism that Disney will do some of that, because they do tend to also look at genres and plays that they make, and they want to go big and win. They want to dominate the channels that they play in. And so my hope is that there will be some at least mental shift to say, you know what, as Marvel, this is a superhero genre, and we should own it. There should be zero, undisputed power in this area for us. And I think that they've largely done that in the movies. Whether you like the MCU movies or you don't, if you think, hey, superhero movies, there is a clear person on top. And that's Marvel. That's the MCU. It's Feige's run. I understand that, you might like the Justice League's movie better. You might like some of the independent stuff that's done. That's cool. And I like a lot of those movies too. But from a public perception standpoint, if you think who is the leader in superhero movies, it's Marvel. And it's an immediate answer financially and just in terms of who owns that channel. So can some of that thinking go toward the comics as well? I hope so. I would like to see in this new structure, Disney and Disney/Marvel to start to say, you know what, we're going to play in a couple different genres and we're going to make sure we dominate. Not just, Marvel sells more than DC. They do. In comics, they are on top, but it's big difference if you look at how how they're perceived in the comics world versus the movies world. In the movies world, it's complete dominance. The world revolves around them and what they do. In comics, they're the leader, and DC's kind of a close number two. That's why I call it the big two. They don't call it Marvel and everyone else. And I think I would like to see Marvel put a strategy in place to say, when it comes to superheroes in comics, we are going to be the absolute, everything will revolve around us. It's us. And then we want to open up, slice of life, and we open up sci-fi. I don't know, 3 or 4 other genres. And then we're going to but our goal is to dominate in everywhere we play. Disney, at the corporate levels, they view their business efforts in that lens, the lens of, we're going to come in, we're going to play, we're going to win. And I think a little bit of that competitive, a little bit of that kind of dominating spirit, I hope to see appear in Marvel as well. But like I said, the other thing, it's not going to happen this week. It's not going to happen next month. It's not going to happen over the next 6 months. This is something where you're going to see changes slowly roll out over the next 2 years. But, it's a big moment in time. There is something to see here. And I still don't get, lots of you are going to tell me in the comments why people do the nothing to see here bit, but it still doesn't make logic. I mean, if you say in your comments because they're dumb, you probably have the best beat on it. But otherwise, I mean, it's very weird. It is very weird, and it is funny when you read stuff like this, particularly the just bizarre, Ike killed in Game of Thrones fashion article. You read that and you're like, as a retailer, you think about the audience that would come into your shop and the different personalities. And there's a lot of different people, kind of silent type that just comes in, buys, the ones that, want to have a conversation about what's going on, the ones that be friendly. And then you have like the customer who's weird, who kind of, pardon the expression, but we'd say the person who picks their nose and eats it, that kind of person who comes in and they've got bizarre takes on things. It's like, hey, it'd be really cool. It'd be really cool if, Nightwing got a, teamed up with Cyborg, because they know each other. If Nightwing teamed up with Cyborg and then they became Green Lanterns. And then as they're having Green Lanterns adventures, they also, took over the New Gods, and Nightwing, got married to Barda because Mr. Miracle was dead. And that would be the most epic story ever. And you're like, that sounds terrible. What? When I read articles like this, I'm like, okay, it's that customer. It's that person. Anyway, thanks for listening.